mean, there are obviously sort of parallels that are going to be drawn out in the media between this fight and the Ronda fight. I mean, does it feel familiar?
There's certain emotions that are familiar, certain things like that, but that doesn't. It's its own fight. It's its own journey, and I don't really want to. I can't be living in 2015. This is a new fight, and this is a new opponent, and totally different style, and a totally different challenge. As far as kind of coming up, being a lot of people. The way they look at the fight, the way they view the fight, things like that. Those are some similar emotions, some similar things. But really, this is its own fight for sure.
Is it one that you kind of had circled that you figured would happen?
I figured this fight would happen. I didn't know when. I knew that it would be sometime. Even when before I signed with the UFC, and back when she was fighting with Strikeforce, and when I kind of thought, I kind of want to get into, MMA, I thought, I wonder if I'll fight her. It's kind of one of those things I always figured would be a possibility that might happen, if we both were still around after kind of, evolving with my career a little bit. So I figured it would happen, and then especially after she started fighting a little bit with the catchweights, a couple fights at catchweight with the UFC, I figured, all right, it's probably getting closer, this might happen,
If you take yourself back to sort of last February, or this February, after 208, did you think was it still a possibility at that point, if you think of where your head was at?
I don't ever look too far ahead, and I don't look too far, in the rearview mirror either, because things can change. You can have one fighter wins, one fighter loses, and everything changes with the brackets, and you never know what kind of possibilities are going to come up. I mean, if you do look back at, when I fought for the title with Ronda, I had 2 fights in the UFC, and it was like, hey, you're fighting for the title. A lot of people wouldn't have thought that when you look back, in the beginning, that, when you sign, you're just going to fight once or twice and then fight for the title. So it was one of those things. I didn't think it would be that soon. My management actually, they did say, they said, I bet they'll throw you out right away. And I said, well, whatever, each fight is its own journey. There's so much that can happen in 1 year, in 1 month, gosh, in the women's division. If you look at, where a lot of the girls are at right now compared to a year and a half ago, the whole top 5 are different. It's a whole different game, and it's just each fight can make a difference of what's the next thing to come.
She's been talking a lot about you being tested. Do you look at this as gamesmanship, or do you think she's actually serious?
It's one of those things that I don't know where that actually came from. Last year I was one of the most tested. They did a whole article on it. I was one of the most tested last year, and this year I believe I've still been tested more. I just never am the one that needs the sticker to put on my social media and let everybody know.
Tested today.
It's like I got tested. It's the name of the game. It's never been something I've ever worried about, because I've always been a clean athlete no matter what I've ever competed in. I've never used a performance-enhancing drug in my life. So for me, it's like, oh, USADA's here. Okay, let's get this done with, so I can either, number 1, get back to bed because they're at 5:45 in the morning, or number 2, let's get this done so I can go train if they come to the gym. So they were just at my doorstep at 5:45 in the morning last week. So it's one of those things. I've never really responded to a lot of trash talk or anything like that, or any attacks coming, because it's the name of the game. What are we trying to do? I'm trying to beat you. I'm trying to knock you out. You're trying to knock me out. This is the name of the game. This is what we do. We're both trying to chase a common goal. Sorry about that. And in order to get there, we were trying to take each other out. So I don't ever say anything. But when it turned into that's the only time I've ever responded, because that's one thing I'm very sure of, and one thing I'm very confident in, and one thing that I'm very truthful about. I'm a clean athlete.
Yeah.
So let's not even go there.
Did you lose respect for her when she said that? Because it seemed kind of out of left field.
It was out of left field, and I feel like everything is. A lot of times when things like that happen, it's okay. Well, I just want to correct this real quick before people on the internet, because people even see one thing on the internet, and all of a sudden it's truth,
yeah, exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So that's why I just wanted to squash it when it first happened, but. On the other side of that, whenever people do things, every action is because of maybe a thought or a reaction or something that's going on with them, and who knows why that came out from her side. There might be emotions on her side of why that even is something that comes out. So I let that be their issue. I just want to, hey, This isn't how I.
I know you posted the video with like kind of your response to it. It can't be found on your Instagram. It looks like it was deleted. Do you know why? Did you delete it? Did someone on your social team?
I put it up for one day. I don't really like my social media to be drama. There's a lot more to my life than just like drama about a fight. So I thought, you know what? As soon as that came out, I just thought, everybody's like, you gotta say this and you gotta say that, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say, I said, honestly, I'm gonna make a response because I just want to just stop it from even like snowballing into an issue that's not even an issue. And that's all it needed. It just, one day is all it needed, and then it's done.
Is it disappointing knowing that now that's we're here, we're asking about it. We could be asking about other things.
Right, and actually, there's probably going to be. This is the first time I've actually done any media about it, but there's probably going to be very few conversations about it because I actually don't even want my name to be associated with that subject because I'm so far from it.
Let's talk about training camp then. Are you bringing anyone in specifically to kind of mimic her at all, or is it just going to be business as usual for training camp?
We have such a great team. Yeah. I have so many teammates that are going to mimic her, do whatever I need, and they're going to be they're there. They're my family. They're like my brothers, and they show up and they do whatever we need. And so I don't need to fly anybody in. I've got them right there in the same roof.
The question to accept or not this fight was about money.
Honestly, they're really kind of the timeline of events that happened with getting this fight together. I've had meetings with Dana before about it, and before they brought in the 145-pound division, they had talked about, he brought up, a possible fight with Cyborg and I at the catchweight at 140, and I said, sure. He said he didn't know if she actually even wanted to do the catchweight anymore. I said, well, let's see what happens, and that's when he opened up the 145-pound division. And she had like the red flag for the diuretic, whatever, with her testing, and that's when I fought Jermaine. So that's kind of like the timeline that took events. So then when I fought Jermaine, and then she wound up, Jermaine let go of the title, and then she wound up having the fight just in July. So she's only had the one fight since we've even talked about it, and I said yes, I'm always open to that fight, but I'm always about passion first, and everything else will fall into place. I don't go in with like my goal to be fighting for money. However, I do know that it is my career, and to be the biggest women's fight, the biggest fight that you can actually promote out of a lot of the men and women right now is it's a pretty big anticipated fight. So I also don't want to be taken advantage of, but it's not really about the money either. But it is a negotiation. I mean, a lot of people from the outside are like, oh yeah, just if she says yes and she says yes, just do it. And there's a lot behind the scenes. But one thing's for certain is I was ready to fight her and said I was open to fight her from the get-go. And I've been training while we've even been maybe negotiating because I just figured I think this is going to happen.
You've done face-offs forever, going back to your boxing career. What did you see up here? Do you look into it? Do you kind of take anything away from what you see in her eyes, any of that stuff, or is it just kind of old hat at this point for you?
Face-off is never old hat, I don't think. Not for me, because the face-off for me is this is real. This is the person. If it's at the beginning we still have a month to the fight. So right now I'm thinking, I know how much work I have ahead of me to face this person that's standing in front of me. If it's the face-off that is at the end of a training camp, it's like, okay, it's time, it's go time. And this person has trained this whole training camp to beat me. So it's very real for me. I don't ever have anything ill will or hateful heart about it, but I definitely take it, I feel the emotion, so.
Did you size her up?
I think of everything. There's a lot of things, but it's not like I'm thinking, ooh, how big is she? How tall is she? How, is she? It's more about just the energy and the vibe. And really, my thing is just I'm just staying confident in my ground, and I know that I'm capable of this victory, and that's what I'm just thinking the whole time.
What about the red hair? Are you a fan?
I figure To each their own, you know. I like colors.
I know, sorry, for when you fought Jermaine before, you kind of said, I'm not doing much different in terms of my weight cut. I'm just going to, fight how I normally fight. Is that the same for this? Or because, she's such a big featherweight, notoriously so strong, are you maybe doing anything on that sense to bulk up a little bit?
I've been doing strength training since my last fight because like I said, this is a fight that I knew was a possibility, and I thought, I just want to be strong, but I don't want to bulk, lose speed, lose endurance, lose any of that. So I want to build like this, like maybe basic core and strength, but I still don't lift a lot of really heavy weights. The most weight that I'll lift is doing power cleans because it's something that's just explosive. But other than that, most of the stuff is body weight stuff, and I prefer to be that way. I feel like there's a strength in that. There's a lot of people that you can see that look real, muscle bound, but can't really explode and do a lot of things like that. And explosive speed also can create a lot of power in punches and kicks. So I want to be strong, but I don't want to get so, oh my gosh, I'm fighting, the biggest 145er and I'm 135er, so I need to just get bulky. Well, I don't want to get in there and bulky and be slow and be, out of my element and get too out of my normal training regimen, because that's not who I am. That means I'm changing what has worked for me. So yes, I'm definitely wanting to be stronger, and I've worked on my strength, but I don't want to just put on weight that's going to weigh me down or make me not feel light on my feet.
And of course sorry, go ahead.
You are one of the biggest names of the boxing. She came here with Clarissa and with Perillo. Is this a message, a clear message for you?
You know what? Even in the boxing and MMA world, boxers are very prideful of boxing, and MMA, they're very prideful of MMA. We have better fighters, we have the better, the more exciting fights or whatever. I've done them both, and I've loved them both for the fact that when I was in boxing, I loved boxing. Now that I'm in MMA, I love MMA. A lot of people from the boxing world actually were really upset when I went to MMA, saying I was, just leaving the, boxing world, and I thought, well,
but how
I'm
do you
starting
see
a
the
whole
presence
new.
of Clarissa here, just supporting your opponent?
I don't. To me, that actually makes no difference at all. Have you seen my teammates?
Of course.
I'm very confident with who I train with. The one other person coming in and I guess it doesn't bother me at all because this is an MMA fight anyway. There's so many things from boxing that I had to change in order to adapt to MMA. I hope that's all she's doing is boxing. I know she's not. You know what I mean? There's people are always. She's got her here with her. That doesn't mean she's just boxing every day. I know she's training everything else. She's not training. She says, "Oh, I have this person that's acting like a lefty that does high kicks." Well, I know she's also practicing her kicks, her punches, her wrestling, her grappling. She's doing it all. No matter what, picture you're trying to portray to the outside world, I already know what a training camp's like. She didn't make it to where she's at by just, kind of flaunting around. She does hard work. She's a hard worker, and she's bringing in people to help adapt and to help grow. So am I.
What's the key point to defeat the best?
And to defeat the best, you have to be on point the night of the fight. And do I have to do everything right? Absolutely, I do. But I know that I'm capable of doing that.
I know you're talking about boxing there. It sounds like the UFC is going to be opening, a boxing branch or Zuffa boxing or something. Are you 100% done with that, or would you ever consider, if there was an opportunity under that umbrella, maybe doing another boxing fight at some point?
I am done boxing. I don't have the passion for it anymore, and it hasn't come back to me. Maybe that's because I'm still fighting, so I don't feel like I ever really retired, But when I started doing MMA, and I would have MMA fight, boxing fight, MMA fight, boxing fight, MMA fight, and I had a really big fight with pretty much the only champion that I hadn't fought in boxing. We had been trying to put the fight together, and we had a fight coming up, and it finally got scheduled, and I thought, this is it. And then she canceled the fight and took the fight with Mia St. John instead, and I was already training for the fight, so we thought, well, let's see what else is going on, and Bellator was coming into town, so I just did a 1-fight contract with Bellator. Because I was already training, and it was 4 weeks away was another fight. So my management just called and said, hey, if you guys want to have Holly, fight with your card here locally because it's local, then great. And so we did that. And that night after the fight, even just training for that fight, I just really loved it. And that night in the locker room, my manager came in there and he just said, at the time he was my promoter, he's still my manager, but he said, I know you don't like to think about more than one fight at a time, and then this fight's over. He's like, your next fight is a boxing fight, and it was like 6 weeks later. And I was like, oh, okay. So my next fight was boxing, and I kind of left the locker room like just uninterested. And I went to the gym and I was boxing, and after my first day back sparring, after that fight, I took 3 days off and I was back in the gym and I was getting ready for the next boxing fight. And I went into my coach's office and I just said, this is my last boxing fight. I don't have any, I come into the gym, I want to kickbox, I want to grapple, I want to wrestle, and that's what I want to do, but I'm having to come in and just box, and my passion is just not there anymore. But we said yes to this fight. So my motivation for this fight is I don't want to end on a loss, but this is my last boxing fight. And I didn't know how I would feel when that fight was over, if, with a win, if I'd be excited and want to do it again, or with a loss, I probably would want another one because I wouldn't want to end like that. But, and honestly, when the fight was over, it was beautiful. They had the hometown knew it was my last fight, and they brought all the beautiful bouquet of flowers. I'm sitting there holding it in the ring, and everything's so like a beautiful moment. I'm thinking, I can't wait to take my boxing shoes off. And that's it. And I keep thinking, am I going to ache for it again? And I don't. And I know it's not because I don't love boxing. I did, obviously. I did it for 10 years professionally. It's just my new motivation is this new career I've been on. So I have no desire to go back to boxing.
Just last one from me. I know you don't like comparing yourself to other fighters and stuff, but given what you've accomplished in both boxing and MMA, do you feel like, on paper at least, you're Cyborg's most credible opponent she's faced so far in her career?
I do feel that I'm her toughest opponent to date. I do. In a roundabout way, just in all-around way. There might have been one fighter that had a little better ground game she did, or one fighter that had maybe a different clinch game, or one. But really, like, as far as the caliber of fighter and experience and thing like that, I do feel like I'm somebody that she hasn't faced before, and that's why this fight's going to be different.